At my daughter's wedding, she looked me in the eye and said, "I have a real mother now, get out." I walked out of that church in silence, but what Rachel didn't know was that she had just woken up the wrong woman. My name is Evelyn. I'm 71 years old, and I have just lived through the greatest humiliation of my life. For 35 years, I was the only mother Rachel ever knew. Her father died when she was 20, and from that day on, I became her entire world. I worked 3 jobs to pay for her private university, sold my late husband's engagement ring to cover her master's degree, and mortgaged this house twice so she would never want for anything. Yesterday morning, I woke up excited ironing my pale pink dress for the wedding. It was the same one I wore to her graduation, the only elegant one I owned. I fixed my hair in the bathroom mirror, practicing the smile I would give when they saw her walk down the aisle. I had saved for a year to give her the pearl earrings that belonged to my mother. But 6 months ago, when Rachel met Victoria Michael's mother, everything changed. Victoria is a high society woman, owner of properties downtown, always dressed like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. From the first day, she looked at me as if I were the maid. What a shame Rachel didn't have a more refined mother figure, she once told me while we were having tea in her mansion. Victoria began to fill my daughter's head with ideas. "A young lady of your standing needs to distance herself from certain elements of her past," she would whisper. "Your future is with us now." I watched as Rachel began to feel ashamed of our humble home, of my hard-working hands, of my accent that betrays my humble origins. The visits became less frequent, the calls shorter. "I'm very busy, Mom," she would tell me. "Victoria is teaching me high society etiquette." Every word was a dagger in my heart, but I kept smiling because I thought things would go back to normal after the wedding. How wrong I was. The ceremony was at the most elegant church in the city. I arrived early with my small bouquet of cheap flowers, looking for my place in the front row. But a man in a suit stopped me. "Excuse me, ma'am, but this section is reserved for the immediate family," he said, pointing to the back. "Your place is in the 15th row." I froze 15 rows back as if I were just any guest, as if I hadn't been the one who rocked her to sleep every night when she had nightmares, who taught her to walk, who worked until my hands bled so she could study. Rachel entered radiant in a white dress that cost more than my 6-month salary. Victoria walked by her side looking like the true mother of the bride. My daughter saw me sitting in the back and didn't even smile at me. Her eyes slid over me as if I were a piece of old furniture. After the ceremony, during the reception, I approached to congratulate her. I had the pearl earrings in my trembling hands. "Rachel, my love, I wanted to give you this. They were your grandmother's." She looked at me with a coldness I had never seen before. Victoria was standing right behind her with that venomous smile. "Mom," Rachel said, but she pronounced the word as if it disgusted her. "I want you to know something." The hall was still filled with music and laughter, but for me the world had stopped. "Victoria has officially adopted me," she continued. "She is going to be my mother from now on, a real mother who can give me the status I deserve." My legs felt weak. "Rachel, I don't understand." "You understand perfectly," she cut me off. "I don't need you anymore." Victoria has taught me that I can't let my past ruin my future. She leaned into my ear and whispered the words that shattered me. "I have a real mother now. Get out." Tears started rolling down my cheeks, but I didn't say a word. All the guests were watching us. Victoria smiled triumphantly. Michael looked away ashamed, but too cowardly to defend me. I left the earrings on the table and walked towards the exit. No one stopped me. No one followed. 35 years of unconditional love vanished in that moment. That night, I cried until I had no tears left. I sat in my small kitchen, surrounded by all of Rachel's memories. Her elementary school drawings stuck on the refrigerator, the letters she wrote to me as a teenager, the photos of our birthdays celebrated with homemade cakes because we couldn't afford a restaurant. It all seemed like a lie now. The next day, I waited for her call. An apology, an explanation, something. But my phone remained silent. I dialed her number 3 times, but it went straight to voicemail. I wrote her messages that she never answered. "Rachel, please let's talk. I'm your mother." "My love, I don't understand what happened. I love you no matter what you said." Nothing. Absolute silence. A week later, an envelope arrived at my door. It was from a fancy law firm. Inside was a letter that chilled my blood. "Dear Mrs. Evelyn Miller, this letter is to inform you that Miss Rachel Victoria Delacroix has decided to legally change her last name and sever all family ties with you." Delacroix. She had taken Victoria's last name, erasing any trace of me from her identity. The letter continued. "Furthermore, you are hereby informed that all benefits, life insurance policies, and inheritances that might have been yours have been transferred to Mrs. Victoria Delacroix, who now acts as her legal mother. My name had been removed from everything. From the $2 million life insurance policy I had been paying for years, from the emergency fund I had built penny by penny, from the joint savings account where I kept money for our future vacations. I couldn't breathe. Not only had I lost my daughter, I had also lost the $30,000 I had saved in that account. Everything I had spent years putting together was now in Victoria's hands. The days turned into a silent hell. Without the insurance income Rachel used to help me pay, and without the savings from the joint account, I couldn't cover the mortgage. The bank notified me that I had 30 days to catch up, or I would lose the property. The same house where I raised my daughter alone, where every wall held our memories, where I thought I would grow old in peace. I had to pack my few belongings and move into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. The Sunset Motel had damp stains on the walls, a bed that creaked with every movement, and the constant noise of traffic that wouldn't let me sleep. I paid $150 a week money that came from my small widow's pension. In the mornings, I would walk to the corner diner, where a cup of coffee cost $3. I would sit at the same table by the window, watching happy families pass by mothers with their adult daughters, arm in arm, shopping together, laughing together. What I thought I would have forever. One afternoon, desperate to hear Rachel's voice, I went to her new house. Victoria had given her a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood as a wedding gift. I stood in front of the Golden Gate, looking at the illuminated windows, imagining my daughter having dinner with her new family. I rang the bell. A maid opened the gate. "I'm looking for Rachel," I said with a trembling voice. "I'm her mother." The woman looked at me with pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I have orders not to let you in." Miss Rachel was very clear. "You are no longer welcome here." My knees almost gave out. My own daughter had given orders to treat me like a dangerous stranger. I walked away from that gate feeling smaller than ever, walking alone through those elegant streets where I clearly didn't belong. Back in my motel room, I sat on the edge of the bed looking at an old photo I had managed to save. Rachel was 8 years old. She was hugging me after her school play. I had skipped work to go see her perform as a princess. "You're the best mom in the world," she had told me that night. "I love you more than anything." Now those words sounded like cruel jokes of fate. The following days were a routine of survival. I would wake up, have a cheap granola bar for breakfast, and go out looking for a job at 71 when no one wants to hire an old woman. I would return to the motel at dusk, buy something to eat at the gas station mini-mart, and lie down wondering how I had gotten to this point. One night while trying to sleep in that uncomfortable bed, I heard laughter through the thin walls. A family was celebrating a birthday in the next room. "Happy birthday, sweetie," a mother shouted to her adult daughter. "I love you so much." The sound of their happiness was like salt in my open wounds. I got up and went out to the motel's small balcony. The city glittered in the distance, full of lights and life, but I felt completely disconnected from all of it. I had given everything for my daughter. I had sacrificed my youth, my comfort, my dreams, and now I was here alone, without money, without a home, without a family. For the first time since the wedding, I felt something other than sadness. A spark of something darker began to grow in my chest. It wasn't just pain, it was a kind of awakening. Rachel and Victoria thought they had destroyed me, that they had taken everything that mattered. But they were wrong. Because there are things they didn't know about me, things I had kept hidden for so many years that I had almost forgotten them myself. The next morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in decades. I searched through the few things I had managed to save from my house. I had a small suitcase with important documents, photos, and some old papers I had never bothered to review completely. I sat on the floor of the motel room and spread everything out on the stained carpet. There was my marriage certificate yellowed with time, mine and Rachel's birth certificates, the deeds to the house I had just lost, and at the bottom of it all, wrapped in a plastic bag that had already turned brittle, I found something that made me stop cold. It was a thick envelope with a notary's seal. I had saved it when my husband died 15 years ago, but in the midst of the grief of widowhood and the desperation of raising Rachel alone, I had never fully opened it. I had only read the first page, which talked about his life insurance and some minor belongings. I thought there was nothing else important in there. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and took out all the documents. There were pages and pages I had never seen. My husband had been a discreet man, never talking about money or property. I knew he worked in real estate, but I always thought he was just another employee, not someone important. As I read, my heart began to beat faster. Last Will and Testament of Robert Miller. The first page mentioned the life insurance I already knew about, but as I continued reading, things appeared that left me breathless. To my beloved wife, Evelyn Miller, I leave all of my real estate properties, including the commercial building located at 2847 Grand Avenue, with an assessed value of $800,000. My eyes widened. A commercial building. Robert had never told me he owned a building. I kept reading, my hands shaking. Undeveloped land of 5,000 square meters in the Palisades residential area with an assessed value of $1,200,000. The Palisades. That was exactly the neighborhood where Victoria had her mansion, where Rachel now lived. But it didn't end there. Luxury apartment in the Emerald Tower, 23rd floor, valued at $900,000, fully paid. There were more properties listed, commercial spaces, land, even shares in companies I didn't recognize. The total value exceeded $4,000. I was paralyzed. For 15 years I had lived in poverty, working as a cleaner, selling my belongings to give Rachel what she needed while I was a millionaire without knowing it. Robert had left everything in my name, but I had never claimed the inheritance because I didn't know it existed. There was a personal note from Robert at the end. My dearest Evelyn, if you're reading this, it's because I'm no longer with you. I worked my whole life buying properties under shell companies to protect our family. Everything is in your name now. I used the pseudonym Eleanor Vance on the legal documents to maintain privacy. The lawyer, Ernest Miller, has all the details. I trust you will use this inheritance wisely. I love you forever. Eleanor Vance. Robert had created a completely separate legal identity to manage the properties. I was Eleanor Vance, a multi-millionaire businesswoman, and I didn't know it. With trembling hands, I searched the envelope until I found an old business card. Ernest Miller, real estate attorney. The phone number was still there, printed in faded gold letters. I dialed the number from the motel's payphone. I wasn't sure if the lawyer was still working after so many years. It rang 3 times before a male voice answered. Miller Law Firm, good morning. Good morning, I said with an unsure voice. I'm looking for Mr. Ernest Miller. I am Eleanor Vance. There was a silence on the other end. Then the voice became more formal, almost reverent. Mrs. Vance, we have been waiting for your call for 15 years. Mr. Miller is available for you immediately. When can you come to the office? 2 hours later, I was sitting across from an elegant man in his 60s in a luxurious office downtown. Ernest Miller received me as if I were the Queen of England. Mrs. Vance, he said, using the name Robert had chosen, your husband was a very intelligent man. He created a real estate empire using your alternate identity. Everything is perfectly legal, all taxes paid, all documents in order. I was just waiting for you to come and claim what is yours. He showed me folders full of contracts, deeds, account statements. Your properties have been generating rent all these years. We have a fund of $4,200,000 waiting for you, plus the properties which are now worth considerably more than when your husband bought them. My head was spinning. $4,200,000? In cash, yes, plus the properties. In total, your estate exceeds $8 million. Mrs. Vance. $8 million. While I was living in a $150 a week motel, I had $8 million waiting for me. There's something else, Mr. Miller continued, opening a red folder. One of your properties is particularly interesting. Are you familiar with the Palisades neighborhood? My heart stopped. Yes, I am. You own the land where that entire residential section is built. The mansions are built on your land, Mrs. Vance, including the mansion of the Delacroix family. Victoria, the woman who had taken my daughter from me, who had humiliated me, who thought she was superior to me, was living on my land. The lease agreements are about to expire, the lawyer continued. As the owner, you have the right to renew the contracts or not to renew them. A slow smile began to form on my lips. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. But it wasn't exactly hope I was feeling. It was something more powerful. Mrs. Vance, the lawyer said, what do you wish to do with your properties? I looked out the window at the city stretching before us. Somewhere out there, Victoria was having tea on her terrace, believing she had won. Rachel was playing the part of a rich woman's daughter, ashamed of her true origins. They both thought they had destroyed me. I want to take back everything, I said with a firm voice. Every penny, every property, every right that belongs to me. And I want to do it quietly. Quietly, ma'am. Yes, I replied, feeling for the first time in weeks that I had control over my life. They are going to find out who I really am, but only when it's too late to do anything about it. Ernest smiled. It was clear he had been waiting for this moment as much as I had, without knowing it. It will be a pleasure to help you, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. The following days were the strangest of my life. In the morning, I was still Evelyn, the abandoned woman, living in a cheap motel. But in the afternoons, I transformed into Eleanor Vance, a multimillionaire businesswoman, beginning to move pieces on a board no one else could see. Ernest got me a new bank account under my legal identity of Eleanor. When I saw the account statement for the first time, I had to sit down. $4,200,000 in real numbers on my screen immediately available. More money than I had seen in my entire life. The first thing I did was move, but not to a mansion. That would have been too obvious. I rented a discreet middle-class apartment, comfortable but not flashy. I needed to remain invisible while I studied my enemies. Ernest brought me a whole file on the Delacroix family. Victoria wasn't as rich as she appeared. Her fortune was built on loans and appearances. The mansion where she lived had an $800,000 mortgage, and the land, my land, cost her $50,000 a year in rent. But there was something more interesting. She had significant debts with several banks, and her import company had been in the red for 2 years. Mrs. Delacroix is living on credit, Ernest explained. Her expensive lifestyle doesn't match her real income. She's maintaining a very costly facade. Perfect. A woman who lives on appearances has a lot to lose. Meanwhile, I began to watch them from the shadows. Every afternoon, I would sit in different cafes near the boutique where Victoria took Rachel shopping. I saw them enter with bags from expensive stores, laughing, acting like the perfect mother and daughter we never were. One afternoon, I followed her to the most exclusive beauty salon in the city. They were getting manicures together, talking about their upcoming vacation in Europe. Rachel looked different, more put together, more sophisticated, but also emptier. She no longer had that genuine laugh I remembered from when she was young. Now she laughed like Victoria, with a calculated elegance that sounded fake. "You know what, Mother?" I heard Rachel say to Victoria. "Mother." The word pierced me like a knife. "Sometimes I don't even remember what my life was like before. It's like I woke up from a nightmare." Victoria smiled with satisfaction. "That's how it should be, dear. The past is just that. Past. What's important is the future we're building together." I stood there invisible to them, listening, as they reduced 35 years of my life to a nightmare they preferred to forget. That night I called Ernest. "I want you to investigate all of the Delacroix family's contracts, mortgages, loans, debts, everything." "For what purpose, Mrs. Vance?" "I want to know exactly how much money they owe, who they owe it to, and when their payments are due." A week later, I had the complete information. Victoria owed $300,000 on credit cards, the mortgage on her mansion was 3 months behind, and her company had a $500,000 loan due in 2 months. Not to mention the $50,000 a year she owed me for the land, which she hadn't paid in 6 months. "There's more," Ernest told me with a smile. "The building where she has her import company is also yours, Mrs. Vance. She's paying rent for a place you own." The irony was delicious. Victoria had been paying me without knowing it for years. "Ernest, I want you to do something for me," I told him. "I want to buy all her debts. All of them. Every single one. Talk to the banks, the credit card companies, everyone who has lent her money. I want to own every penny she owes." Ernest looked at me with admiration. "Mrs. Vance, that would make you Victoria Delacroix's sole creditor. You would have absolute power over her financial situation." "Exactly." Over the next few days, Ernest worked like a financial wizard. One by one, he bought all of Victoria's debts. The banks were happy to sell off problematic loans at a discount. In total, I spent $900,000 to acquire debts totaling $1,400,000. Now, Victoria owed all her money to me, though she didn't know it yet. While this was happening, I also investigated Michael Rachel's husband. He was a weak man, dominated by both his mother and his new wife. He worked at a consulting firm that paid well, but not extraordinarily so. His salary couldn't sustain the lifestyle Victoria had imposed on the family. One afternoon, while having coffee near his office, I saw him leaving work. He looked stressed, wearing an expression of worry I hadn't noticed on the wedding day. I followed him to a bar where he met an older man. "I don't know what we're going to do, Dad," he was telling his father. "Mom is spending money we don't have. The cards are maxed out, the house has mortgage problems, and Rachel doesn't understand that we're not as rich as we pretend to be." His father sighed. "Your mother has always lived beyond our means. But now with Rachel in the family, she feels pressured to maintain a standard we can't afford. The worst part is that Rachel abandoned her real mother for this," Michael continued. "And now she's asking us to buy her a luxury car because all the wives at her level have one. She doesn't know we can barely pay the bills." Michael had a conscience. He knew what they had done was wrong, but he was too cowardly to confront the women in his family. That night in my new apartment, I sat in front of the mirror. I was no longer the broken woman who had walked out of that wedding a month ago. My posture was different, my gaze firmer. I had recovered something I thought I had lost forever. My dignity. I picked up my phone and dialed Ernest's number. "Mrs. Vance, how can I help you?" "It's time for Victoria to know who her creditor really is," I told him. "Schedule a meeting with her for tomorrow. Tell her that Eleanor Vance, her new primary creditor, wants to discuss the payment terms of her debts." "Do you want me to reveal your identity?" "Not yet," I replied, feeling a cold smile form on my lips. "I want her to think Eleanor Vance is just another businesswoman. Let her beg first. Let her feel what it's like when someone more powerful controls your destiny." "Understood, Mrs. Vance." I hung up the phone and stared at the city out the window. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. Victoria Delacroix was about to learn about real power, not the kind bought with appearances, but the kind built with patience and intelligence. And she had no idea what was coming for her. The meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. at Ernest's office. I arrived an hour early and positioned myself in the adjoining conference room, where I could hear everything through the thin wall but remain invisible. Ernest had installed a small microphone so I wouldn't miss a word. At exactly 3 o'clock, I heard Victoria's heels echoing in the marble hallway. Her voice came through clear and arrogant. "I hope this doesn't take long. I have a spa appointment at 4. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Delacroix," I heard Ernest's professional voice. "Please have a seat. We have much to discuss." "Look, Mr. Miller," Victoria began with that condescending tone I knew so well. "I don't know what kind of misunderstanding there is, but I don't owe any money to some Eleanor Vance. My financial affairs are perfectly in order." Ernest cleared his throat. "I'm afraid there's an error in your information, Mrs. Delacroix. Mrs. Eleanor Vance has acquired all of your debts. Your mortgage with National Bank, your credit cards with Chase and American Express, your company's business loan with Santander, and of course the overdue rent on the land where your residence is built." There was a silence that lasted several seconds. When Victoria spoke again, her voice had lost all its previous arrogance. "How is that possible? The banks can't sell my debts without notifying me." "Yes, they can, Mrs. Delacroix, when the loans are significantly in default. According to our records, you owe a total of $1,400,000 to Mrs. Eleanor Vance. Your situation is delicate." "This is ridiculous." I heard Victoria stand up from her chair. "Who is this Eleanor Vance? I've never heard that name in business circles." "She is a very discreet businesswoman, Mrs. Delacroix. She prefers to keep a low profile, but I assure you she is completely legitimate. In fact, she is one of the most important real estate owners in the city. I want to speak with her immediately. I'm afraid that won't be possible today. Mrs. Vance is currently evaluating her legal options. However, she has authorized me to offer you a payment plan." Victoria fell silent, waiting. "You have 30 days to pay the full amount of the debt, or Mrs. Vance will proceed with the seizure of your properties and the foreclosure of the mortgage." 30 days? That's impossible. Who has $1,400,000 available in a month? Those are the terms Mrs. Delacroix, although Mrs. Vance did mention she might consider alternative terms if you are willing to make certain concessions. "What kind of concessions?" "First, the immediate vacating of the land in the Palisades. Second, the transfer of your import company as part of the payment. And third, a public apology for certain social indiscretions." I couldn't help but smile. Ernest was following the plan we had discussed perfectly. "Social indiscretions? What are you talking about?" "Mrs. Vance is aware of situations where you have inappropriately interfered in the family relationships of others. She considers this morally reprehensible." Victoria was silent for a long moment. I could imagine her trying to process all the information. "I need time to think," she finally said with a trembling voice. "Of course. You have until noon tomorrow to give me an initial response. After that, Mrs. Vance will proceed with the corresponding legal actions." I heard Victoria's footsteps leaving the office, but this time they weren't the confident heels from before. They sounded hurried, nervous. 10 minutes later, Ernest entered the room where I was waiting. "How did I do, Mrs. Vance?" "Perfectly," I told him. "Did you notice how her voice changed when she realized she had no control? Yes, she went from arrogance to panic in a matter of minutes. What do we do now? Now we wait, and in the meantime, we prepare for the second phase." That night, I set in motion the most delicate part of my plan. I had hired a private investigator to monitor Victoria and Rachel's phone conversations. It wasn't entirely legal, but Ernest had contacts who could do these things discreetly. At 8 o'clock, I received the transcript of the call Victoria had made to Rachel as soon as she got home. "Rachel, we need to talk urgently." "What's wrong, Mother? You sound upset." "We're in serious financial trouble. There's a woman named Eleanor Vance who has bought all our debts. She wants the full amount in 30 days or she takes everything." "Eleanor Vance. I've never heard that name. How much money?" $1,400,000. There was a long silence. "Rachel, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here. It's just, Mother, where are we going to get that much money?" "I don't know. Your husband earns well, but not that well, and my business has been slow." "What's going to happen to the house, to our lifestyle?" "I don't know, dear. Maybe we'll need to make some adjustments." "No, I can't go back now. I've already told all my friends I have a new life. I can't suddenly show up living like before." "Like before? Like when she lived with me," I thought bitterly. "Calm down, Rachel. We'll find a solution. What if we ask Michael's father? He has money." "No, I already tried. He's also worried about his own finances. He says he can't help us with such a large sum." "Then what are we going to do?" "I'm going to talk to this Eleanor Vance. I'll see if I can negotiate something. In the meantime, you need to talk to Michael. See if he knows anyone who can lend us money." "Okay, but Mother, promise me we won't lose everything. I can't go back to that life. That life. The life with me. the life where she was loved unconditionally but didn't have mansions or luxury cars. The call ended there, but it was enough. Victoria was desperate, and Rachel was more worried about maintaining her new image than solving the real problems. The next day at 11 in the morning, Victoria called Ernest's office. "Mr. Miller, I've been thinking about Mrs. Vance's proposal. I need more time, and I would also like to meet her personally. Mrs. Vance has agreed to a meeting, but on her terms. It will be tomorrow at 5 in the afternoon in her private office." "Where is that?" "In the Emerald Tower building, 23rd floor. It's the presidential suite office." Emerald Tower, 23rd floor. My luxury apartment that I had inherited from Robert. Victoria didn't know she would be walking into my home. "All right, I'll be there. Mrs. Delacroix, there is one more condition." "What is it?" "Mrs. Vance insists that you come alone, without lawyers, without family, without witnesses." Victoria agreed, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. That night, I prepared everything carefully. I hired a cleaning company to leave the apartment spotless. I ordered an elegant conference table to be set up in the main living room. I bought an expensive business suit, had my hair done at an exclusive salon, and for the first time in decades, I wore professional makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I was no longer Evelyn, the cleaning lady abandoned by her daughter. I was Eleanor Vance, a powerful businesswoman who controlled the destiny of her enemies. Tomorrow, Victoria would meet Eleanor Vance, but she still wouldn't know that Eleanor Vance and Evelyn Miller were the same person. Not yet. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my apartment doorbell rang. From the security camera, I could see Victoria in the hallway, visibly nervous, checking her appearance in the elevator mirror. She was wearing her best light pink suit and her most expensive jewelry, but for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't radiate that arrogant confidence that had bothered me so much. I waited exactly 2 minutes before opening the door. I wanted her to feel the discomfort of waiting. "Mrs. Delacroix," I said in a cold, professional voice when I finally opened it. "I'm Eleanor Vance." Victoria looked me up and down, clearly trying to size me up. I had changed my appearance so much that it was impossible for her to recognize me. My hair was styled completely differently. I was wearing designer glasses, professional makeup, and a business suit that cost more than I used to earn in 3 months as a cleaner. "A pleasure, Mrs. Vance," she replied with a forced smile. "Thank you for seeing me." "Please come in." I led her to the main living room, where I had set everything up like a real executive boardroom. Victoria looked around with obvious admiration. The apartment was elegant but not ostentatious, exactly the image I wanted to project. "Please have a seat," I said, pointing to a chair across the table. I sat on the other side, maintaining distance and power. "Mrs. Vance," Victoria began in a careful voice, "I believe there's a misunderstanding about my financial situation." "There are no misunderstandings," I interrupted her firmly. "Your debts are perfectly documented, $1,400,000 in total. It's just that, well, these last few months have been difficult. My company is going through a temporary restructuring." "Your company is bankrupt, Mrs. Delacroix. It has been in the red for 2 consecutive years." Victoria turned pale. "You've done a lot of research on me." "I research everyone who owes me significant money. It's a sensible business practice." "Look, Mrs. Vance." Victoria changed her strategy, leaning forward with that manipulative smile I knew so well. "I am a society woman in this city. I have important connections. I'm sure we can reach an arrangement that benefits us both." "What kind of arrangement are you proposing?" "Well, I can pay you a portion now and the rest in monthly installments. I can also introduce you to the right social circles. A businesswoman like you could benefit from the proper connections." I couldn't help but give a cold smile. "You're offering me social connections as a form of payment. It's a legitimate proposal. At our social level, relationships are as valuable as money." "Our social level," I repeated slowly. "Tell me, Mrs. Delacroix, what do you know about my social level?" Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Well, it's obvious that you are a successful, educated, refined woman." "Unlike whom? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question." I'm wondering if you believe all women deserve respect, regardless of their background or economic situation." Victoria frowned, clearly confused by the turn in the conversation. "Of course I do. I respect all people, all of them." "Yes, all of them, even the working mothers who raise their children alone. Of course. Even the women who work as cleaners to pay for their children's education." Victoria was starting to look uncomfortable. "Mrs. Vance, I don't understand where you're going with these questions." "I'm trying to understand your character, Mrs. Delacroix, because you see I have information about certain situations where you have shown a remarkable lack of respect for women in vulnerable situations." "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't. I understand that you recently convinced a young woman to abandon her biological mother so you could legally adopt her." Victoria stiffened. "That is a private family matter." "Private? A public humiliation at a wedding is not exactly private." "How do you know about—" Victoria stopped, her eyes widening in alarm. "I know many things, Mrs. Delacroix. For example, I know you told that young woman that her biological mother was an embarrassment to her new social position." The situation was complicated. Rachel needed guidance to adapt to her new lifestyle. Guidance that included teaching her to despise the woman who sacrificed everything for her. Victoria stood up from her chair. "Mrs. Vance, I don't understand why you're so interested in my family affairs, but this is not relevant to my financial situation." "Sit down," I said with a voice of steel. "We're not finished." Victoria hesitated for a moment, but finally sat back down. I could see the fear growing in her eyes. "The relevance, Mrs. Delacroix, is that I don't do business with people who lack moral integrity." "I have moral integrity." "Yes. Tell me, how did you feel when you saw that mother walk alone out of the church after her daughter publicly rejected her?" Victoria was silent. "Did it give you satisfaction to see a 70-year-old woman humiliated like that?" That wasn't my intention." "Not your intention. You planned all of it carefully. You convinced Rachel to legally change her last name to transfer all her savings and life insurance to treat her like a stranger." "How do you know all these details?" Victoria was clearly scared now. "Because that woman," I said slowly, rising from my chair, "was me." Victoria froze completely. Her eyes went wide, her mouth fell open, and all the color drained from her face. "No, that's not possible. I am Evelyn Miller Victoria, Rachel's mother, the woman whose daughter you stole, the woman you humiliated in public, the cleaning lady you considered so inferior to you." Victoria stood up so quickly that her chair tipped over backward. "This is impossible. You're Eleanor Vance, a successful businesswoman." "I am both," I said calmly. "Eleanor Vance is my legal business identity, the name my late husband created to protect our properties. Evelyn Miller is the one who raised the daughter you took from me." "No, it can't be." "For 15 years I lived in poverty without knowing I was a millionaire. I worked as a cleaner while owning multi-million-dollar properties. But now I know everything, Victoria. And now I have the power." Victoria started backing away as if she wanted to flee. "You're crazy. This is a conspiracy." "A conspiracy? No, Victoria. This is justice. Rachel will never believe you. She's happy with her new life." "Happy?" I took a step toward her. "Do you know what I heard yesterday in a phone conversation between you two? She was terrified of going back to that life, the life with me, as if being loved unconditionally was something shameful." "You can't prove anything." "I can't." I took a folder from the table. "Here are all the deeds to the properties where you live, all the lease agreements you've been violating, all the documents that prove Eleanor Vance and Evelyn Miller are the same person." Victoria looked at the folder as if it were a venomous snake. "You thought you had won," I continued in a calm voice. "You thought you had destroyed a poor, helpless woman. But what you really did was awaken a powerful woman who had been dormant for 15 years. What do you want from me?" "I want you to feel exactly what I felt. I want you to experience loss, humiliation, abandonment." Victoria started to cry. "Please don't do this. Can I give Rachel back?" "Give back." I looked at her with contempt. Rachel is not a piece of property to be returned. She is my daughter, and she will have to decide for herself who she really is. What are you going to do to us? I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Tomorrow, Victoria Delacroix, you are going to learn what it means to lose everything. Victoria left my apartment completely shattered. From the window, I watched her walk to her car as if she were a frail old woman, not the arrogant woman who had walked in an hour before. Her hands trembled so much that it took her several tries to open the car door. I didn't sleep that night, not because of nervousness, but because of anticipation. For weeks I had been the victim, the abandoned woman, the rejected mother. Now it was time for them to feel what it's like when the world crumbles beneath your feet. At 8 in the morning, I called Ernest. It's time to execute phase 2. What are your instructions, Mrs. Vance? I want you to immediately begin the eviction process for the land in the Palisades. Send the legal notices this morning. They have 72 hours to vacate the property and the building where her company is located. I also want the entire Delacroix family to understand that they have nowhere left to hide. Anything else? Yes, contact all the luxury service providers they use, the country club, the spa, the boutiques where they have credit. I want them to know that Eleanor Vance no longer authorizes any charges in the name of Victoria Delacroix. Understood. And if they try to contact you, let them find that Eleanor Vance is nowhere to be found. Officially, Eleanor Vance has become invisible. 2 hours later, the chaos began. My private investigator kept me informed of everything that was happening through the wiretaps. The first call was from Victoria to Rachel at 10:30 in the morning. Rachel, I need you to come home immediately. We have an emergency. What kind of emergency? I'm at the beauty salon. Get out of the salon now. We have to leave the house in 72 hours. What are you talking about? Eleanor Vance, oh my God, Rachel, she's your biological mother. There was a silence so long, I thought the call had been disconnected. That's impossible. It's not impossible. I met with her yesterday. Eleanor Vance is Evelyn Miller. Your real mother owns everything. Our house, my company, our debts, everything. It can't be. My mother was a poor cleaning lady. A multi-millionaire cleaning lady. She's been playing with us this whole time. Are you sure? Completely sure, yes. She showed me all the documents. We're tenants on her property, Rachel. We've always been tenants on her property. This time the silence was even longer. Rachel, are you there? Yes. Yes, I'm here. It's just... Mother, if this is true... What? If this is true, then I did something terrible. Something unforgivable. Don't say that. You did what was right for your future. What was right? I abandoned my mother at her own daughter's wedding. I humiliated her publicly. I took all her savings. That was your decision, not mine. It was your idea. You convinced me she was an embarrassment to me. I was only guiding you towards a better life. A better life. A life built on lies and humiliation. Do you know what this means, Victoria? It means my real mother had money the whole time. It means I never needed to abandon her to have a comfortable life. It means I hurt her for nothing. Victoria didn't know how to respond to that. I'm on my way now, Rachel continued, her voice breaking. We need to talk about this. An hour later, another call came, this time from Michael to his father. Dad, I need to tell you something incredible. Remember Rachel's mother, the one we abandoned at the wedding? Yes, that whole thing that always seemed cruel to me. It turns out she's a millionaire. She owns the land we live on, the building where Mom has her company, and all of our debts. What are you saying? That we've been living on the property of the woman we publicly humiliated, and now she's kicking us out? Michael, that can't be true. It's true, Dad. Mom just confessed everything. She said she met with her yesterday and that Eleanor Vance is actually Evelyn Miller. My God, and what are you going to do now? I don't know. Rachel is completely devastated. She says she needs to find her real mother and ask for forgiveness. Maybe that's the right thing to do. Yes, I think so. But Mom is furious. She says Rachel is being emotionally manipulated. At 2 in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Eleanor Vance speaking. It was Rachel's voice, but it sounded completely different. Broken, vulnerable, like the little girl I remembered. "Who is this?" It's Rachel. Rachel Miller." She had started using my last name again. Could we talk? About what? About everything. About what I did. About who you really are. About whether there's any way to fix this. Where is Victoria? I don't know. She left after our argument. I think she went to talk to lawyers to see if she can stop the eviction. And what do you want, Rachel? There was a long pause. I want to see my real mother. I want to ask her for forgiveness for the most terrible thing I've ever done in my life. Your real mother is dead, I told her coldly. She died the day you abandoned her in that church. Don't say that, please. Why not? It's the truth. The woman who raised you, who sacrificed everything for you, who loved you unconditionally, that woman no longer exists. Eleanor Vance is someone different. Please. Her voice broke completely. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I need to try to fix it. How do you plan to fix 35 years of love that you destroyed in 5 minutes? I don't know, she cried. I don't know, but I have to try. I listened to her cry for several minutes. A part of me, the part that was still Evelyn, wanted to comfort her, but Eleanor Vance was stronger. Tonight, I finally said, at 8 in the park, where we used to go when you were little, the one by the lake. You'll come. Someone will come, I replied. Whether that person is your mother or Eleanor Vance will depend on what you have to say. I hung up the phone and stared out the window. The game was reaching its climax. Victoria had lost all her power. Rachel had woken up to reality, and I had to decide if I wanted complete revenge or if there was anything left of the mother I had once been. That afternoon, as I prepared for the meeting, I received one last call from my investigator. Mrs. Vance Victoria Delacroix just arrived at National Bank. She's trying to get an emergency loan using properties that no longer belong to her as collateral. Did they give her the loan? No. When they verified the ownership of the assets, they discovered everything is in the name of Eleanor Vance. They threw her out of the bank. Where is she now? In her car in the bank's parking lot. She's been crying for 20 minutes. For the first time in weeks, I felt no satisfaction hearing about Victoria's suffering. I felt empty, as if revenge wasn't as sweet as I had imagined. It was time to face my daughter. I arrived at the park half an hour before the meeting. It was the same place I used to take Rachel when she was a little girl, where I taught her to ride a bike, where we celebrated her birthdays when we didn't have money for big parties. The memories hit me like waves. Her laughter as I pushed her on the swings, her tears when she scraped her knees, her spontaneous hugs when she told me I was the best mom in the world. I sat on the same bench where we used to feed the ducks. The lake reflected the city lights, creating an atmosphere that would have been romantic if it wasn't so heavy with pain. At exactly 8 o'clock, I saw a figure walking slowly down the path. It was Rachel, but she looked completely different from how I had seen her in recent months. She wasn't wearing her elegant clothes or her expensive jewelry. She wore simple jeans and a white blouse, just like she used to when she lived with me. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, without the sophisticated hairstyle Victoria had imposed on her. She approached the bench slowly, as if she were afraid I would disappear. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Mom," she said in a small voice, using the word she had so cruelly rejected weeks ago. I didn't answer immediately. I looked at her for a long moment, studying her face. I could see the little girl she had been, but also the woman who had chosen to hurt me. "Sit down," I finally said. She sat at the opposite end of the bench, keeping her distance. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. We just listened to the sound of the water and the distant traffic. "I don't know where to start," she finally murmured. "Start by explaining to me how it's possible for my own daughter to look me in the eye and tell me she didn't need me anymore." Rachel began to cry silently. I didn't want to hurt you. Victoria had been filling my head with ideas for months. What kind of ideas? She told me that to truly belong to high society, I needed to detach myself from my humble past, that the wives of successful men couldn't have mothers who worked as cleaners. And you believed her?" "Yes," she whispered. "I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because I was dazzled by everything she was offering me." "What was she offering you that I hadn't already given you? Status, money, social respect?" She paused. "Superficial things that I now realize don't matter at all compared to what I lost." "And what did you lose, Rachel?" "You. I lost the only person in the world who loved me unconditionally. I lost the woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for my university. I lost my real mother." The tears were flowing freely down her face now. "Victoria never really loved me. She saw me as a project, a doll she could mold for her own satisfaction. But you loved me for who I was, not for who I could become." "And why did it take you so long to realize that?" "Because I was blind. Because I was so obsessed with fitting into a world I thought was better than my life with you." She looked me directly in the eyes. "Do you know what Victoria told me today when she found out you were Eleanor Vance?" "Tell me." "She told me I should be happy because now I had access to a real rich mother. She didn't understand why I was crying. To her, you were only valuable now that we knew you had money." I felt a pang of pain mixed with anger. "And what did you say to her?" "I told her she had never understood anything, that a mother's worth isn't measured in dollars, but in years of sacrifice, of unconditional love, of being there when you need her most." Her voice broke. "I told her I had lost the best woman in the world by following her advice." We were silent again. I was struggling with conflicting emotions. The part of me that was still Evelyn wanted to hug her, forgive her, tell her everything would be okay. But Eleanor Vance was more cautious, more hurt. "Do you know how much money I lost because of you two?" I asked her. "Money. The $30,000 I had saved in our joint account. It was transferred to Victoria when you changed your last name. I had to live in a motel because I couldn't pay the mortgage without that money." Rachel covered her mouth in horror. "No, I didn't know that happened." "You didn't know. You signed the papers, Rachel. You authorized the transfer of all my savings. Victoria told me they were legal formalities, that they wouldn't affect your financial situation." "Lie after lie," I muttered. "Do you realize how she manipulated you?" "Yes, now I realize. But you know what the worst part is? That I wanted to be manipulated. Because it was easier to believe that you weren't enough for me than to face the reality that I was an ungrateful daughter." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. It was the first time she had taken full responsibility for her actions. She wasn't just blaming Victoria. "When I was a little girl," she continued, "I always felt different from the other girls at my school. They had parents with office jobs, big houses, expensive vacations, and I had a single mother who worked cleaning toilets to pay for my school." "You were ashamed of me." "Sometimes," she admitted, and even though I knew it was the truth, hearing it hurt. "Not all the time, but sometimes yes. And I hated myself for feeling that way because I knew you were incredible. I knew other mothers wouldn't have done half of what you did for me. But when Victoria showed up, she offered you the chance to have the mother you always wanted." "Exactly. And I was selfish and cowardly enough to take it." I got up from the bench and walked toward the lake. I needed to process what I was hearing. Rachel followed me but kept her distance. "Do you know what's the most painful part of all this?" I asked without turning to look at her. "What? That if you had told me all this before, if you had explained how you felt we could have worked together to improve our lives. I had money, Rachel. I always had it. We could have lived comfortably. We could have traveled. We could have had everything you wanted without you abandoning me. I didn't know you had money. But you knew I loved you. And you knew you loved me. Wasn't that enough to at least talk to me before making such a drastic decision?" "You were right," she cried. "You were absolutely right. I was a coward. I was selfish. I was cruel." I turned to face her. "And what do you want now, Rachel?" "What do you expect from this conversation?" "I don't expect anything," she replied. "I don't expect your forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were because I know that's impossible. I just wanted you to know that I realized the magnitude of what I did and that I would give anything to be able to undo it. Anything. Anything. Would you leave Michael? Would you give up your new life? Would you go back to living with me in a humble apartment as if nothing had happened? She hesitated for only a second. Yes. Even if it meant publicly admitting you were wrong, even if your new high society friends turned their backs on you. Yes, she answered more firmly. I would rather be poor and despised with you than rich and respected without you. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope growing in my chest. But Eleanor Vance wasn't ready to give up so easily. I'll have to think about it, I told her. This conversation doesn't erase what happened. I know. I'm just asking for a chance to show you I can be the daughter you always deserved. There will be a meeting at Victoria's house tomorrow, I told her. The lawyers are going to execute the eviction. If you really want to prove something to me, show me whose side you're on when the time comes. The morning of the eviction, I arrived at the Palisades mansion at 9 o'clock sharp. Ernest accompanied me with a folder full of legal documents and 2 court officers. I had decided to be present as Eleanor Vance, not as Evelyn. I wanted Victoria to see exactly who held the power now. The mansion looked different in the morning light. It was no longer the symbol of unattainable luxury that had intimidated me months ago. It was simply a house built on my land, occupied by people who owed me $1,400,000. Victoria opened the door before we even rang the bell. She looked terrible with deep, dark circles under her eyes, disheveled hair and the same wrinkled clothes from the day before. She had aged 10 years in 2 days. "Good morning, Mrs. Delacroix," I said in a professional voice. "We are here to execute the legal eviction from this property." "This is unfair," she said in a hoarse voice. "You're using your money for revenge. I'm using my money to reclaim what is legally mine. You have violated the terms of the lease agreement by not paying rent for 6 months, because I didn't know you were the owner. Ignorance does not nullify contractual obligations, Mrs. Delacroix." We entered the house. Victoria had packed some suitcases, but it was obvious she wasn't finished. Most of the furniture and decorations were still in place. "Where is Rachel?" I asked. "I don't know. She left last night after our fight and hasn't come back." "What fight?" Victoria looked at me with resentment. "She says she wants to go back to you, that this life isn't worth it if it means losing her real mother. I told her she was being emotionally manipulated, but she wouldn't listen." "Emotionally manipulated? The way you manipulated her. I gave her opportunities you never could have given her." "With what money, Victoria? Your company is bankrupt. Your credit cards are maxed out. Your mortgage is in default. Everything you gave Rachel was built on debts you couldn't pay." "That's temporary. Businesses have their ups and downs." "No, Victoria. Businesses require planning, honesty, and hard work, things you apparently don't understand." One of the court officers approached. "Mrs. Vance, would you like us to proceed with the inventory of seizable assets?" "Yes, please proceed." Victoria collapsed onto an expensive sofa that would soon no longer be hers. "What do you want from me? You want to see me on the street with nothing." I sat across from her, maintaining my businesslike composure. "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you think is important." "I already understand. I've lost my house, my company, my social status." "You haven't lost the most important thing." "What? You haven't lost your son." Victoria looked at me confused. "Michael! Michael is still your son. He still loves you despite everything. I lost my daughter because of your manipulations. Rachel can go back to you whenever she wants. Can she? The damage is already done. Victoria, you taught her to despise me, to be ashamed of me, to see me as an obstacle to her happiness. Those lessons are not easily forgotten." Victoria was silent for a moment. "What do I have to do to make this stop?" "Nothing. This isn't about what you do now. It's about what you've already done." At that moment, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Rachel getting out of a taxi. She was carrying a small suitcase and looked determined. She walked through the front door without ringing the bell. Seeing me sitting in the living room, she came straight toward me. "Mrs. Eleanor Vance," she said formally, and then turned to Victoria. "Victoria, I've come to get my things. I'm leaving this house." "What are you doing?" Victoria stood up alarmed. What I should have done months ago, choosing my real family. She's manipulating you. She's using her money to control you. Rachel looked at her with a calmness I hadn't seen in her before. My money. Victoria, my mother never needed to use her money to control me. She controlled me for 35 years with something much more powerful. Unconditional love. You're making a mistake. The mistake was made 6 months ago when I decided to be ashamed of the woman who gave me life. Rachel turned to me. Mrs. Vance, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but if there is any chance of getting my mother back, I am willing to do whatever it takes, including giving up my marriage. My marriage is based on lies and manipulation. Michael is a good man, but he can't separate himself from his mother, and I can't continue living in an environment where my past is considered a source of shame. Victoria approached Rachel. You're going to throw your life away for a woman who is emotionally blackmailing you. The only one who emotionally blackmailed me was you, Rachel replied firmly. You convinced me that my mother's love wasn't enough because it didn't come with social status. You taught me to value appearances more than genuine feelings. I gave you opportunities. You gave me a golden cage. You turned me into someone I wasn't, someone who could abandon her own mother for money. Rachel knelt before me. Mom, I know I'm not Rachel Miller anymore. I know I'm Rachel Delacroix on legal papers. But if you'll let me, I want to be your daughter again. I want to get my real last name back. I want to get my real life back. I looked at her for a long moment. Eleanor Vance wanted to keep punishing her, to keep making her suffer for the pain she had caused me. But Evelyn, the mother I had been for 35 years, was tired of so much pain. Get up, I said softly. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. If you really want to be my daughter again, there are conditions. Whatever they are. First, no easy money. You're going to work, you're going to earn what you have, you're going to value every penny just like I did for years. Yes. Second, no being ashamed of who you are or where you come from. You're going to honor our history, our struggles, our sacrifices. Yes. Third, you're going to help me with something important. What? We're going to create a foundation for single mothers who need support to educate their children. We're going to use my money for something that really matters. I would love to do that with you. For the first time in weeks, I felt that Eleanor Vance and Evelyn Miller could coexist peacefully. One was power and justice. The other was love and compassion. Victoria, I turned to her one last time. You can stay in this house for 1 more week to find another place. After that, the property will be renovated for the foundation. 1 week? That's it. It's more than you gave me. I had to leave my own life immediately. Victoria collapsed back onto the sofa, finally understanding that she had lost completely. Rachel and I walked out of that mansion together. Outside in the morning sun, she took off the expensive earrings she was wearing and let down her sophisticated ponytail. You know what the first thing I want to do is? She asked me. What? Go to our favorite cafe, the cheap one on the corner where we used to have breakfast on Sundays. I want to sit with you at that table by the window and listen to you tell me about your life as Eleanor Vance. I want to meet my multimillionaire mother, but I also want to get my mom back who made pancakes on Saturday mornings. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. That sounds perfect, but you're paying for the coffee with your own money from the job you're going to get tomorrow. Deal? She laughed, and for a moment, she was my 8-year-old girl again, hugging me after her school play. 6 months later, the Evelyn Miller Foundation was helping over 200 single mothers educate their children. Rachel worked there as a coordinator, earning a modest but honest salary. Victoria had disappeared from our lives, and according to the latest news, was living in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Justice doesn't always mean revenge. Sometimes it means reclaiming what truly matters, love real family, and the peace of knowing that your worth isn't measured in money, but in the lives you touch with your heart. I forgive you, my daughter, but above all, I forgive myself.